Julia, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about some of the key issues that we've researched with your team at the Global Institute for Women's Leadership. Particularly, we wanted to get your opinions on the impact of the pandemic on women and also the role of governments and employers to help support women as we come out through the recovery phase as well. So firstly, I just really wanted to hear your views on whether you think gender equality and some of the progress that had been made pre this pandemic is likely to be rolled back as a result of what we've faced over the last year and this pandemic.
I am very concerned that progress being made will be rolled back. I'm concerned in a variety of ways. First, because of the economic impact of the pandemic. It's been felt mainly in sectors where women are disproportionately employed, and I think that means that women are not only hit now, but for many of them it could be a long, slow recovery. We're already seeing data that says many women are making the choice to exit the labour force, which I think is bad news too. So we've got a combination of forced unemployment, but also women choosing to exit the labour force just because of how difficult circumstances have been with managing kids, school, lockdowns, all of it in the pandemic. I also am concerned from a fundamental perspective about girls' education. We know that from earlier health crises like the Ebola epidemic, that the most marginalised girls did not return to school when schools reopened. So I'm worried that in many developing countries around the world, we will see more girls miss out on education and all the empowerment and choices that that brings. And then I'm worried that governments and corporations and many other actors will be distracted from gender equality. They were starting to make progress. There was a deal of focus pre the pandemic, not as much as there should be, but at least there was some focus. And I'm worried that people will say to themselves, well, gender equality, we'll get to that when we can, rather than thinking how can we rebuild out of this pandemic with gender equality at the centre.
That's definitely something we've seen through the research we've done with your team, Julia, and the gender pay gap not being the top priority, obviously, given the pandemic issues across the world, but that's fallen down in people's levels of concern. Just taking a moment then to think about the recovery and whether or not, what kind of issues do people need to really think through from a female perspective? Are there specific things that businesses and political leaders really need to think about and consider?
I think that there certainly are. First and foremost, I hope that we take with us beyond the days of the pandemic a new appreciation for the value of caring work. When we stop and say who got us through in the darkest of days, those workforces in the health and caring sectors are disproportionately female workforces, and they've been undervalued, underpaid, and not sufficiently respected for far too long. It's one thing to go out and applaud for your local healthcare workers during the days of the pandemic, but we need to take that sentiment with us into a re-evaluation and preparedness to properly remunerate caring work. Second, I think the best of the technology that we are using now, not all of it, because people need people, and of course it doesn't apply to every job. Not every job can be done online remotely, but for those jobs that can, we've had a masterclass in doing this. Many things that people said could not be done flexibly and virtually have been done that way for the best part of a year now. And if we are really intentional about this, I think we can build working environments that are far better for work and family life, for women and for men. But we have to be incredibly thoughtful about it. If we just say, well, you know, the office is open again, you know, you can go in if you want to, or you can work from home if you want to, I think that will be a recipe for men going to the office, women disproportionately choosing to work from home. And if nothing else is done, then come promotion time, training opportunity time, the men will be visible, the women will not, and that will end to the great disadvantage of the women. So I think this change needs to be built in with proper evaluation of merit and outcomes and proper contacts with remote teams.
Really important points. Thank you. And then lastly, leadership at a political level throughout the pandemic has really been in the spotlight across the world. And just whether you had any reflections on the kind of leadership traits our political leaders will need to have as they seek to take countries through the recovery period and back out the other side.
Well, I have been delighted to see the dialogue about how well women leaders are doing during the pandemic. Now, I am not a believer that men and women's brains are somehow inherently different, and neuroscience tells us that our brains are the same. But certainly our socialisation is different, and the research tells us that we are most likely to support women, particularly women politicians, if they combine strength and empathy. We want to know that they've got the backbone to lead, but we also want to know that they're caring and nurturing. And I think it's those skills that have come to the fore and been most admired during the pandemic. That's what populations have looked for. And I hope we continue to value that kind of leadership, strength and empathy combined as we come out of the pandemic. Or put another way, I think the style of leadership that has been shown most wanting during the pandemic has been the ultra macho, blustering style of leadership, not concerned about the facts, not prepared to listen to the experts. That may have got many a political leader through crises in the past, but of course the virus isn't interested in your swagger. It just gets along doing what it's going to do, and that's infecting human beings. And so I, think that style of leadership should be viewed as increasingly outmoded and outdated as we move to the next stage.
Thank you very much, Julie. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.